Healthcare investment banking has long followed a volume-driven, cookie-cutter model that prioritizes transactions over transformative outcomes. Our next guest, Sam Libby, is changing that paradigm as founder and president of TCB Capital Advisors. With over 30 transactions totaling more than $20 billion, Sam brings a mission-driven approach to underinvested healthcare areas like oncology, women's health, and neurodegenerative diseases. After experiencing healthcare systemic inefficiencies firsthand during his own patient journey, Sam founded TCB Capital Advisors to reject traditional banking models in favor of long-term partnerships that embed early with management teams. His unique three-vertical approach combines banking expertise, clinical advisory, and commercial operations to drive both patient impact and financial success. Join us to discover how Sam's stewardship mindset is empowering healthcare pioneers to scale life-changing innovations. Let's go.
Welcome to Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli, where we highlight and speak with the innovators, the game changers, and the pioneers who are deeply passionate and relentless in solving the problems our world is facing today. This is your opportunity to connect with and learn from these leaders and to support them on their mission. Perhaps they will soon be hearing your story as well. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you on this journey with us.
Hi, Sam. A big welcome to our podcast today. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, given your extensive experience completing over 30 deals totaling more than $20 billion in transaction value and your passion for supporting healthcare companies in underinvested areas like oncology, women's health, and neurodegenerative disease through your role as founder and president of TCB Capital Advisors, I'm excited to have this conversation today. But before we dive in, a bit of housekeeping. While listening to any of our episodes, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you will automatically receive episode updates in your podcast player. Simply search Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And lastly, please visit the bottom of the episode notes to connect with me on LinkedIn and X in order to further the conversations occurring on this podcast. All right, Sam, it's almost time for our community to learn how you and the TCB Capital Advisors team are pioneering healthcare investment banking by rejecting the volume-driven, cookie-cutter model to instead embed early with management teams and focus on long-term success in transformative healthcare sectors. But first, what's that one piece of advice that you would give to others who are passionate about reimagining the health of this world?
I think of it from a pretty simple standpoint is, we are stewards that owe an obligation to the patient. And so from whatever area of healthcare that we're focused on, be it direct investing, be it improving the quality of care for someone who's suffering from an indication, I think maintaining that humble mindset that, we're a supporting actor in the process that a patient is going through, that they're fighting through. And that is why we're here. It's very easy to get the headlines of the high-flying IPO and think about it from a financial and dollars and cents perspective. But these are people's lives. It's people's quality of life. It's their family. And I think maintaining that as the focus and the foundation and everything is built on that leads to one, better outcomes, and two, a much more inspired life than just thinking about it from a dollars and cents standpoint.
Well, and also keeping that front and center, right, as we work through these journeys of investing in these companies, and we'll talk more about how you guys are doing that at TCB. But if keeping that front and center really helps, the operators and the investors that the operators are teaming up with really stay centered as to what is important, right? And I'm a firm believer. I think we can do good and do well in this industry. And if we keep those end users, typically the patient, right, they're the folks in mind, and of course those clinicians as well, I think huge success can be had because we have to remember at the end of the day, this is why we are here. Sam, is this also kind of part of the culture that you kind of help build with not only your team members at TCB Capital Advisors, but also the organizations that you're investing in?
Yeah, I can say that there's not a client that we work with that doesn't share that same mindset. And thankfully, I've been very lucky to work with a team and with partners that it's not only they just echo that type of philosophy, it's they push it forward. And so there's always days where you can feel a little bit worn out. And so having those partners that believe in the same thing, are completely mission focused, they kind of challenge you to remember why you're here and why you're doing what you're doing. So, I've been really blessed in that area.
Well, I'm excited to, on the other side of the commercial break, discuss your partners, how you're going about, how you're collaborating and working with some of these really industry leaders who are pushing the forefront of healthcare and innovation and really bringing our industry and the things that we can achieve together to bear. I'm looking forward to unpacking all of that and more after we get back from thanking our community champion sponsor. Healthcare faces a paradox that echoes through generations. While the current practices that help heal patients today are vital, it is crucial to evaluate them through an environmental lens. OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative is a collection of interviews featuring influential thought leaders and industry experts like you who share their sustainability strategies, insights, and provide valuable perspectives from diverse industries to inspire innovation within the healthcare sector. OSHA invites you to join this journey. Want to share your sustainability story? OSHA is actively looking for partners to highlight the important and inspiring work being done around the globe. Check out OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative and series at OSHA.com. That's OSSUR.com. Or visit the episode notes and click on their link. Together, and with OSHA helping lead the way, let's all be responsible for tomorrow. We are back with Sam Libby, President and Managing Director at TCB Capital Advisors. Sam, thank you so much for really setting us up on the front end of why we are all really here and doing what we're doing in healthcare, right? Keeping the folks that we serve in mind and front and center as we go on these journeys. Sam, I can't wait to hear how and why you and the team launched TCB Capital Advisors. Had a lot to discuss there. You have one heck of a storied journey that led up to you running this organization and founding it a few years ago. So we'll discuss that a little bit. Of course, then we have to discuss how are things going today in the marketplace? Where are you guys making those impacts? What are you guys seeing out there that we should be thinking about and contemplating? And then, of course, got to grab that crystal ball off the proverbial shelf over here and discuss a little bit of what's going to be happening future state as this industry continues to change. Then, of course, we've got to be able to figure out how we can be helping you have a wonderful community rallied around this podcast. So we'll be certainly asking where we can be helped plug in on your guys' journey at TCB Capital Advisors. But before we get into all of that and more, Sam, take us back, take us behind the curtain a bit. Where were the aha moments? Why did you launch this organization? Give us a little bit of kind of how it all came to be in the first place, and then we'll dive into current state after that.
Yeah, happy to talk about this, Mike. Great question. I've been a healthcare investment banker for the entirety of my career. Myself, as well as some of the other founders, we worked on different platforms, sometimes on the same platform together. And then following being on Piper Sandler's platform, I ended up getting brought into a smaller broker-dealer to build out healthcare. I worked there for a bit and built out the practice and then got an offer to sell. And then it was really a question of what I wanted to do afterwards. Do I want to just go work for a bigger platform? And really, it comes down to a question of what impact I wanted to make, because you could just go back to doing the same deals. But when I reflected back on my career to date and the transactions I worked on, we had done good work for clients. We had represented them and fulfilled our obligations, but I didn't feel that I had impacted human health in a positive way, at least not in a direct way. And so when we built TCB, the focus was to build it from the ground up, focused on indications that are particularly challenging for patients. So the focus was, where are we going to spend our time? And so we wanted to spend our time in areas that were currently challenged. So we looked at cancer, both on the screening and a therapeutic side. There's obviously a challenge. We're not finding cancers. There's a lot of cancers that are highly treatable that we're not finding in an area where their survival rate is great. And so, we know there's a screening monitoring issue. Neurodegenerative condition was one of the other ones where when you speak to a lot of investors about the neurodegenerative or particularly the Alzheimer's space, they'll say stuff like, Alzheimer's is a graveyard. So many drugs get put forward, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the drugs fail. And so they're afraid of taking on some of that risk. That's not universal, of course. There's obviously investors that spend a lot of time there and put a lot of capital to work there. But the fact that that became kind of a soundbite that I picked up, we were like, okay, great. It's a graveyard. Investors are scared of that. We want to work there because patients are suffering that need a path forward. Both on the screening side, we have to find the patients at a point in which the current approved therapeutics can delay the onset of some of these debilitating neurological conditions. And then we added women's health later as we kind of got schooled by a group of entrepreneurs. They explained to us that when you take fertility out of the data for women's health, NIH grants, and VC funding, it's suddenly in the single digit. There is so much money that flows into fertility, and it's the one area of women's health that men are involved in. And again, I'm not trying to discredit the importance of the fertility market. It has made so many people, parents that wouldn't have otherwise been. It's a beautiful thing. But there's other things too. I mean, a woman is 2/3 more likely to develop Alzheimer's than man. Cardiovascular issues are still one of the leading causes of death for women. There's so much innovation that's needed across multiple indications. And even if you just were to look at the female aging population and the challenges they have peri and post menopause, these are other areas that need innovation. And so, after getting our lesson, I always say I'm the wrong mouthpiece for women's health issues. But I think the more mouthpieces we have, be them men or women, are going to be positive. And then we really took a look at applied digital health, AI as the buzzword, but it's so much more than that, and is supported by clinical data and how that can be used in the indications we were just discussing to improve human health. Because it's a lot of great ideas come out on the tech side. We want to work with the ideas that are proven in the clinic, that have patient data, and that are already driving results even at early stage.
A very exciting journey that you and the team are on. And Sam, you've really hit a lot of the nails on the head of where innovation is needed and some of the gaps that you guys have been seeing in the marketplace. So thanks for really setting the stage of why you launched TCB Capital Advisors. One thing that we also discussed kind of on the front end as well is how you and the team get involved, and that you are focusing on that long-term success and transformative healthcare sectors. You're embedding early with the management teams. While at a high level, that sounds great, and a lot of these management and operating teams need that. What does that mean in practicality and tactically? How are you guys going about doing exactly that? And of course, what are the outcomes that you're seeing because of enacting exactly what I just said?
It's interesting because it's never the same thing twice. When you look at companies in the, I'd say, seed to Series A to Series B window, and even Series C, there are valleys between each of those raises where so much innovation is lost because companies die. And I think there was a greater brain drain coming out of the pandemic because obviously all this money went into infectious disease or really COVID testing. And then, there were companies that were focused on innovation in oncology and screening for even neuro issues that suddenly pivoted, and they were focused on infectious disease tests and COVID. They didn't get an approval, and suddenly they had wasted all their money. And so there was, I think, a bigger gap between raises than had historically been there. And then the byproduct of the pandemic is that there were a lot of investors that lost. They put big bets on the board, and then they became scared of diagnostics, which is an absolute tragedy because diagnostics are the first time where we can identify an issue to then be actually treated. So people moved to therapeutics, they moved to services, and pulled a lot of money out of the diagnostics market. And so with each company, the services that we perform and offer is completely different. At its core, we're really broken up into 3 verticals at TCB. So we have the banking group, which, works on transactions, raises capital, kind of the standard thing. I always like to joke that bankers are hammers, so everything's a nail. So then we have the counterpoint, the balancing point to them, which is the clinical and scientific advisory board. We need to obviously always lead with the science. So the bankers are not allowed to take on a mandate, invest in a company, or work with a company in any way, unless a scientist or a clinician on our advisory board has voted on it and said, there's value here. Then the fun thing that we learned is that the scientists and the clinicians like working on deals. So now they've actually gone deeper than just kind of like a vetting. And we've had industry experts with, 40 years experience in pharma development working on deals with us. And then the kind of the middle of the firm, the third leg of the stool, if you will, is the commercial and operations strategies group. This group is amazing. They do everything that bankers like to talk about. So building out a sales funnel, helping with research collaborations, even executive coaching. And it's made up of both full resources as well as resources that we bring in on kind of a contract basis that our commercial experts have run and led large sales organizations for bigger companies, have run business units, who know how and who just built the skill set where it's a resource that the company we're working with could not afford. And suddenly they can have the advice, guidance. And it's not just kind of like the person comes in for 2 hours, gives a little speech and leaves. They want to build out a sales organization. We have people within that group that have built out $200 million sales organizations who manage that sales organization. And so we bring them in to say, let's build it out the right way. Because a perfect example is the sales organization might want a certain CRM because it has the bells and whistles, might be the wrong CRM. And then the company can spend tens of thousands of dollars it doesn't have investing in this CRM and then getting the consultants to make it usable and this, that, and the other thing. Whereas if they had the guidance and we're working with somebody who's done all of this with integration from the beginning to the end for success, then we tailor the needs and the services we're offering based on what the company needs. And so we have some that we're helping them with product launches. We have some that we're doing, research collaborations and business development to establish, like, they have an early stage technology. They need a lab partner and they need like chip manufacturing for some of their technology. We're helping them do all of that. And at the same time, we're working with them on a strategy towards the various corporate development or, banking mandate type of things that are going to happen along the way, be it a seed raise, then a Series A, and, maybe an eventual exit. Everything is built to drive towards that conclusion. So what I've enjoyed the most is looking at a client relationship and not where are they going to generate revenue in 3 months, but rather how is this relationship going to evolve to help them accomplish their long-term goals 2-3 years out as part of multiple transactions and multiple projects that we're going to work on together.
Well, let's also make this personal. As well as I do, healthcare is very personal, whether it touches us directly or with our family or friends, et cetera. And there was a recent Medium post in which that you stated that you, quote, had to jump through too many hoops for relatively simple healthcare needs. And that has really helped influence your passion for starting TCB Capital Advisors. So as we think about this notion of how it all touches us and why a lot of us get into this industry, Sam, how does that personal perspective that you shared in that Medium post inform the types of companies and solutions that you and your team choose to work with?
Yeah, so it's interesting because when I look back on that post and talking about those issues, I actually can think of a more recent example. And I was a competitive athlete when I was younger. I've had multiple concussions. And we started working with a company in the neurodegenerative space. And, they're focused. The company's name is Altoida. The CEO, Mark Jones, I've known for years. One, he's an amazing human being. And two, the company, their offering is positioned to, I'd say, one, impact the quality of life for millions of people today because therapeutics in neurodegenerative, particularly Alzheimer's, are about delaying symptoms. But I really see them as being poised to save millions of lives in the coming years because we can find patients earlier. And if we find patients earlier, we can treat them better. We can get better drugs out there. And eventually we can arrive at a cure for some of these neurodegenerative conditions. And the reason I bring this up was Mark had mentioned, and the company has discussed, that the patient journey from I am starting to forget things or I'm having an issue, I'm going to go to my primary care and I'm going to tell them, hey, this is going on, to the point where they get to the specialty neurologist at a memory center, he quoted about 12 to 18 months. This is unacceptable as an outcome because the therapeutics that are approved need to start being administered as soon as possible. And if it's too long, they kind of age out. The disease has progressed too far. They're no longer viable. And when you're dealing with something like Alzheimer's, well, mild cognitive impairment leading to Alzheimer's, every month is important. Every day is important. That's one more day that you can function, that you can be a father and a mother and anything else that you are, and you can live. And so I wanted to challenge this. I wanted to see, at the time, I had a concierge physician, I had private healthcare, and I live just outside of Houston. So I was like, let me see how long it takes me to get to the memory center. I have enough concussions that I can qualify for all the tests. So went to the primary care, went to the neurologist, from the neurologist, got the blood work. Now, you can't go from the primary care to the memory center. They won't take you because they are so inundated with patient appointment requests and new patients. Again, because for the first time ever, there's something Alzheimer's patients or people afraid of Alzheimer's can do. So they're going to the memory center. And so I went to the neurologist. They did all the tests to check for autoimmune and all these other things to see if there's a pathology issue that would be causing the memory issues, comes back negative. And then they give me the name and they give me the referral for the number one selected, like what would be their top pick for me to go to the memory center. And I spent 2 months trying to get on the phone with the scheduler to find out if I can schedule an appointment. I finally do, because it turns out only one scheduler schedules for that doctor, and they could see me 6 months out. So I say, okay, that's not going to work. I'll go to the second choice. And so they get me in. By the time I got in, now again, starting with the concierge physician, having private pay insurance, having good insurance, and being able to navigate, I'm fairly savvy at navigating the patient journey for an indication in healthcare in general. It took me 10 months to get to a memory center and to be able to get a cognitive assessment. in my case, I have the time. I wasn't concerned about this, about having a mild cognitive impairment or a risk of Alzheimer's. But I really wanted to know when companies say it's going to take this long, or they talk about a patient journey being challenged, you never know. And so if I was going to represent them, I wanted to know. And if I had stayed with my first choice, it would have been 14 months, right in the window that the CEO had discussed. I was able to beat the window slightly, still with an unacceptable outcome. And it's not the fault of the memory centers. They can only see so many patients. It's not the fault of the neurologist, my first neurologist who had to do the blood test and then refer me. The issue is that there is an accessibility issue to cognitive assessments, because with Alzheimer's, you got to prove a cognitive issue and pathology. And then the pathology side, so diagnostic imaging or PET scan, is expensive. So the entire process of finding out if someone is developing Alzheimer's is time consuming and costly. Two issues that need to be fixed because we need to be identifying patients as quickly as possible. And so I don't mean to go into like all of the nitty gritty and in the weeds of this, but the thing is with healthcare, the issues are in the details. And so like companies like Altoida, they've created an amazing platform that can be utilized at the primary care physician or in a clinic, and in 10 minutes identify. And I mean, it's built off of an insane amount of clinical data. It's not like they pulled it together in a weekend with a coder. The Altoida platform has been utilized in clinical trials for years and years and years. And to be able to be pushing a diagnostic like that into the patient journey enables us to then identify who has a problem and get them to the memory center faster and get them to treatment faster, which buys them time. And that's sometimes all we can do.
What a great actual example of the impacts. So the things that you're seeing where we need to find innovation and the impacts that can be made. Sam, thank you for sharing that very, very important narrative. Let's also kind of look ahead as well. What are the most promising areas of healthcare innovation that you and the team believe will drive both significant patient impact and attractive returns for investors over the next 5 to 10 years? You know, as well as I do, a lot of things are moving fast. You said it earlier. This notion of AI is coming at healthcare quite quickly. Kind of a little bit more on that macro. And as we think ahead, not only for the industry at large, but for you at TCB Capital Advisors, again, what are some of those things that you're seeing that are going to drive both significant patient impact and those attractive returns for the investors?
You know, it's an exciting time for all of us. Obviously, innovation and the pace of innovation has quickened. We're all seeing that. I mean, there's a news article every 3 days on some new thing that never existed before. And a lot of it is powered by kind of the AI revolution. But I think some of the seeds are for the things that are most interesting have been planted years and years ago. I think if I was to say what excites me the most, it's predictive medicine. It's being able to utilize prognostic tools to evaluate who's at higher risk. A lot of the tailwinds behind that movement come out of the longevity medicine space. You know, so much money went into longevity medicine and kind of, you know, we saw it with the GLP-1s and, you know, a lot of other areas where it was a focus on not only just living longer, but living longer and living better. And, you know, that kind of shift in mindset then translated to when we have technology, how can we use it to predict the outcomes that we're trying to avoid rather than just screen for them? And obviously, again, I spent a ton of time in screening, monitoring, and kind of the diagnostics landscape. But again, the earlier we find out there's a problem or going to be a problem, the better we can treat it. And so an example of this is we're close to the company Clarity, who just recently got the first de novo FDA clearance for an AI risk prognostic in breast cancer. And, you know, that's a mouthful, but what it simply means is they're able to look at a simple mammogram and identify who is, for the first time really in history, who is low risk, moderate risk, and high risk for developing breast cancer within the next 5 years. Dr. Connie Lehman is an expert in women's imaging. She's one of the contributors that helped establish the guidelines for how we evaluate high-risk patient populations and had a simple question: who's a high-risk woman when it comes to breast cancer? And ended up that question and that journey that she went on to be able to identify these patients so that we can screen them properly and treat them led to the creation of Clarity. And again, could Clarity have happened without the innovations of AI? And the answer is probably not, because really that's at its backbone. But Connie's expertise and her ability to know exactly what had to happen, not only was it beneficial for clarity and is it beneficial for women who are high risk of breast cancer, it also sets the standard for approvals for tools like this, because there now has been the first platform for risk prognostic, but the first platform to be approved like this. So that means that now there's a bar that up and coming AI technologies can aspire to, which, it does take work. There's a lot of clinical data that went into it. There's a lot of images that went into it. It's, hard to compete with kind of a known quantity and sector. But, currently 34% of breast cancer is identified as stage 3 or later. Some of that is in the screened population who gets mammograms. Some of that is in the unscreened population. But at the end of the day, how do we get that to zero? How do we get it to cancer is found earlier? And the way you do that is you can't just diagnose and screen. You also have to understand who's at higher risk. And so that's what they're doing today. And so that's a trend that's really exciting for me.
Very much indeed. And of course, let's bring it back to current state as well. Sam, we always love to get our community involved, have an amazing community rally around this podcast. Sam, what's one problem, need, or question that you and the team at TCB have that our community can be helping you with?
Yeah, I think when I spoke earlier about the impact of the pandemic on especially the investor community, there's been a flight to safety. And the movement from, you see a lot of very traditional venture funds that took on FDA risk, that took on CMS risk, that took on commercial risk. 3 very, very scary things, right? If you're looking at a company for the first time and you're like, is the FDA going to approve it? That's nerve-wracking. If you say, is CMS going to give them codes? That's nerve-wracking. And so I guess to the investors, I would ask that we take a deeper look at that, because the movement from venture to growth, I understand. There's a lot more safety in kind of the growth side of investing. Revenue is proven out. The commercial model is proven out. They possibly have some but they have approval. They have CMS codes. And there's the view that is safe. But, I also look at it. The venture funds have been at the forefront of innovation in healthcare for as long as I can remember. And without them, early stage companies before approval, before the codes, will not be able to get to that stage. So some venture investors are still putting the chips on the table. But, I would say when we look towards making the safe investment, also, I will say CMS changes its mind. They'll reverse decisions. They'll raise thresholds. So even a CMS code and a decision is not a surefire shot at security for the next 10 years on that company or 5 years. So that's, from the investor side, that's one thing. And then I would just say for the entrepreneurs who are in the space and trying to make a change in healthcare, there are amazing companies. And having those conversations, not from a competitive standpoint and not like, are we going to be acquired by somebody? But big companies, small companies, there are passionate people in those companies and they want to talk to early stage companies and they want to give advice. And so the thing that I would challenge the innovators is have those discussions before you need to raise money, before you're looking for acquire. Have those discussions as peers trying to change healthcare. And you'll be amazed that a strategy person or a corp dev person in a multi-billion-dollar company is sitting there going, I still want to impact patient lives. And they're passionate too. So really, I would say rally around the community. And the fact that you built the community, Mike, is great, because having these discussions and supporting each other is how we're going to get things done.
Well, and for those folks in the community that want to maybe continue this conversation with you and the team, how do they get a hold of you? Social media handles, websites, or otherwise? How do they find you online, Sam?
I'm on LinkedIn, as is TCB Capital Advisors. My email also is samlibby, that's BBY, at tcbcapitaladvisors.com, and website tcbcapitaladvisors.com. So happy to continue discussions, be it service we offer, or even if it's just to discuss about an area of healthcare that someone's passionate about. We're all in the friend business. We're here to help each other.
And for our community, simply scroll on down into the episode notes in your favorite podcast player to access all those touch points for Sam and the team. Of course, you can head over to our free global online community as well over at passionatepioneers.com. There will be a post for Sam's episode where you can leave comments, suggestions, and questions or otherwise, as well as access those contact points for Sam and the team, again, over at passionatepioneers.com. Sam, what a wonderful conversation and an exciting one. And I knew it was going to be. But before we get out of here, we have one more piece for you. It's a fill in the blank. I'm a passionate pioneer because?
I'm a passionate pioneer because it's the only way to impact change.
Short and sweet, yet very powerful. Sam, thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today to share your story, your journey, and where you and the team continue to have that passion and the fire to move this industry forward as we work together to do exactly that. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with our community today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. We'd love to hear your feedback about the podcast so we can continue to improve this community and to further support the pioneers being featured. Lastly, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and invite your friends and colleagues to join us. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you back with us during our next episode.